Glorious.
Yeah.
I put a slight tiny layer of foundation on because I was like,
Good afternoon, everybody. I call the work session for the City of Sierra Vista City Council for September 21st to order. We have a number of items today, and we'll start with number 2A, which is the agenda for the 23 September Sierra Vista Council meeting. Of course, we start with a call to order, roll call, invocation, pledge. Acceptance of the agenda. Is there any additions, corrections, editing that we need to do to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
Councilmember Johnson won't be here, so the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Is that a volunteer for the pledge?
Oh, I'll do it, Mr. Mayor, that's fine.
Did you, council? Okay, so you're gonna do it,
Oh, yes, sir, that's
Mr.
fine.
Benning? Okay. All righty. Any other additions? All right, we go down to item 2 is the consent agenda, and we have the special city council meeting minutes and the regular city council meeting minutes. Any comments, corrections, additions to those minutes as they're presented? Okay, and then we have a discussion, possible action for a sewer easement. And we haven't had a presentation, so Jeff, you gonna do this for us today?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The Veritas Christian Community School will be relocating at 393 South Highway 92, which is located outside of the city limits. And if you look at the map here, you'll see it's located right there at the corner of Glen Road and Highway 92. The property currently has a 1,000 gallon septic system that will not meet the needs of a school with at least 150 people. Rather than construct a larger septic tank, the school has decided to connect to city sewer. Now, per city policy, businesses located outside of the city limits that request to connect to city sewer are required to either annex or sign a pre-annexation agreement if the property does not meet the annexation criteria at the time of the request. Now, as you recall, the City Council approved a pre-annexation agreement for this property on June 24th, 2021. Now, as a result of the annexation, the sewer line will be extended from Golden Acres Drive to the Veritas property. As you can see on the map here, the green hatched line is the location of the proposed sewer line. The line will be located partially in Cochise County public right-of-ways, as I mentioned, Golden Acres Drive, as well as partially on private property. The easement will have a 20 feet in width on the private property portions and 60 feet in width in the public right-of-way. The easement is necessary to ensure the city has legal access to the sewer lines for maintenance purposes. And Mr. Mayor, I will also tell you that the city has not received these easements yet from the property owners. We have given them till the end of the day today for us to receive those easements so that the Public Works Department has the ability to review the legal descriptions and the deeds. If it's not here by the end of the day, then staff recommends that we pull this agenda item from Thursday's meeting.
Okay. Let me ask you some other questions while we're talking to the neighbors.
Sure.
Have we done anything to speak with the neighbors to see if they would like to hook into the sewer system rather than maintain and when I say the neighbors, the folks on either side of the easement that runs north-south on this thing?
Mr. Mayor, we have not.
We have not.
We have not at this point,
Okay.
no. This was brought to our attention
I know they're trying to do it very quickly. I get it, because there's a time rush, the crunch. They want to get kids in school, and they haven't even turned dirt yet. They obviously need a place to flush before they put kids in school. One of the reason I'm asking the question is in the past, when we have extended sewer or other city services into county areas, and that's what this is, it's a county area, we would, in the past, have gone to the neighbors and say, hey, we're running a sewer line here, this is a good reason to annex. If your septic system is undersized or it's been there for 40 years and in need of maintenance, et cetera, this would be a good time. Or if you're planning on developing this area, it's a good time to annex into the city. And we need to at least, even if we want to get the sewer system in early for the school so they can build and operate, we at least need to go back to the neighbors and say, this is going on. Here's the advantages, disadvantages. Are you interested in annexation into the city? And if you look at the map, I'm guessing that most of the properties that are developed are commercial properties, which obviously garner more revenue than residential properties when we talk about both sewer and sales tax. So it's worth our while to do that little extra work, even if we're gonna have to do it after the fact. So I hope that's in the plan somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
How many, sorry, I have a question. How many of these neighbors are we still waiting on permission from?
Well, we have permission from what I understand from RDI, that we do have permission for easements for these sewer lines from all of these property owners. We're talking about Cochise County, and I believe there's 2 additional property owners. It's just a matter of the surveyor putting the legal descriptions together and submitting them to the city, and that's what we're waiting on at this point.
The surveyor? Oh, okay. I misunderstood you then, thank you.
The property has to be the actual area where we put the sewer, the property on 10 feet on either side or 20 feet on either side. It has to be described in a legal term so that they can record it, et cetera.
Right.
So that's the problem. The surveyor's the one that's got to get that to the right office.
Correct.
To get that done. Okay, so you're hoping this is ready for Thursday?
We're hoping, yes.
Okay.
The location of this extension was literally put on our radar last Thursday. They're hoping to have the school open by October 1st. So we wish we had more time to do outreach, and we will certainly do follow-up after the easements are put in place with the adjacent property owners.
Ma'am.
Will this connection go with the new sewer fees or I don't remember when they take effect.
I think it would be
Should be-
current.
Yes,
There was a 60-day.
I believe it was at least 30 days till
Okay.
that takes effect. So a large part of this depends on when everything happens.
Okay.
But if they're outside of that window of time
Okay.
described by David Felix, then they would be subject to the new fees.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
Sir.
now this green dotted line, Jeff, that you're describing here in the map,
Yes.
that's going to be a city expense, is that correct?
No, that is not. The
Okay.
sewer line is going to be constructed by RDI. They're
Okay.
extending the sewer line. Now, we will be accepting it for maintenance purposes. So if there's an issue down the road with maintenance, we will have to bear the cost of those maintenance expenses. But the sewer line is being constructed by RDI.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Just one more question. So the properties that are up against it, so there's some residences there on Glen Road. Is it only the ones that are on that side of the street could hook into or annex themselves if they wanted to? Could that be a possibility to use the sewer line for their houses? Those residents? Was it both sides of the street or just that one?
So, you see where the green line is?
Mhm.
Okay. If the property is on or near the green line, they can annex in. There are some commercial properties that are a little further to the west. They would have to get with their neighbors and put a connection line together if they
Okay.
wanted to do that.
Okay.
So, they need to be, I'm just asking that they're aware of the opportunity. And most people probably have good septic already and aren't exceeding capacity. But again, we have a lot of open territory there. I'm assuming eventually, what's the open area zoned in the county? Do you know? Is it residential or commercial? I would assume commercial since it's interior, away from the main highways. But
I would assume so. I haven't looked at the zoning.
Okay.
in the county.
but again, it's the commercial where that I'm concerned about because it provides tax revenue as well as revenue for the sewer system.
And,
Yeah.
and
There's a new Circle K going up there, and there's a church back there as well.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the new Circle K. We did contact them. At one point, they wanted to connect the city sewer. After just further discussion, they decided they would go ahead and build a septic system instead. So they're not interested in connecting the city sewer at this time.
Okay. But my whole concern is the commercial folks need to be aware that it's available. And if they're willing to annex in to take advantage of the sewer line, that's fine. And hopefully it's built. Is it going to be built for the capacity for that, or is the capacity just for the school? Do you know?
I don't know at this point, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I could probably answer that one. Standard for these types of sewer extensions per ADEQ is 8 inches. Minimum would be 6 inches, but mostly what we see out there is 8 inches, and that would be plenty sufficient for anything in this area. It should be noted as well that after this line is in per ADEQ regulations, if the septic systems within a certain distance of this line were to fail,
Yeah.
then at that point they would actually be obligated to tie into the sewer system if it is feasible to do so. There's cost considerations for that, and then there is also engineering considerations that we would have to look at from an ADEQ perspective. But eventually, it is likely that anyone within close proximity to this line would be tied into this sewer.
Okay.
So extensions are very possible
Possible.
to the south and to the east as well.
Within our service area,
Yes.
approved by ADEQ, correct.
Okay. So a lot of sewer talk today. Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Jeff. We now go to item number 3, and it's the Housing and Urban Development report. Is it?
Mr. Mayor, that's me.
Okay,
Good
Matt.
afternoon. I noticed the memo and resolution were provided online, and that was added this afternoon. So you should have that if you connect to the online agenda. So this is a federal report that we prepare and file at the end of each program year that describes how community development block grant funds were put to use and then the accomplishments that were realized. A lot of the information contained in the report is carried over from the 5-year consolidated plan and our most recent annual action plan, so it's probably familiar reading to you. During the last program year, which coincides with the city's fiscal year, the city expended just under $194,000 of our regular community development block grant allocation to carry out the construction of improvements at Soldier Creek Park and Landwehr Plaza. Another $6,000 was spent on preliminary engineering activities associated with Sears Center Park, which is scheduled for construction early next year. The CAPER also accounts for the use of our special allocation of CARES Act money through the CDBG program to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. We held a couple of public hearings on that subject last year and amended our plans to direct the funding through an emergency crisis fund administered by the United Way. During the program year, working through their nonprofit partners, they distributed $243,385, with the bulk going towards rental and utility assistance. And I checked in with their director this afternoon, and they are on track to complete the program services by the end of this month. And by agreement, on November 1st, we'll have a final report on performance measures for actual activity outcomes that will compile the statistics that you've been receiving on a monthly basis. A public notice has been provided of a 15-day comment period starting on September 7th and ending today, both online and in the Sierra Vista Herald. No comments have been received to date, so on Thursday, we'll be looking for your authorization to submit the report to HUD which will meet the required deadline of 60 days by the end of the program year.
So the vote is just to authorize the submission.
Approve the report and authorize the
Authorize
submission.
submission, okay. You talked about working with the United Way on the money we gave them. That should be in next year's report then? The final for that will be in next year's report?
Mr. Mayor, just under $60,000 will be expended from July 1st through September 30th. So the balance of the contract. And that amount will be reflected in next year's
In
CAPER.
the next one, okay. All right. Questions? Discussion? Okay. Looks like that's pretty straightforward. Item number 4 is possible ordinance, development ordinance changes on a number of things. Mr. Pregler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Staff is recommending 3 separate development code amendments for your consideration on Thursday. The first proposed amendment relates to the definition of building height and finished grade. The proposed definition of building height states the vertical distance to the highest point of the roof for a flat roof and to the average height between the eaves and ridge for gable, hip, and gable roofs, measured from finished grade. The current definition of building height is measured from lowest grade to the highest point of the building, rather than average height. So the actual height of the building may exceed the defined building height. Now, as I mentioned in the building height definition, that the buildings would be measured from finished grade. The proposed definition of finished grade is the final elevation of the ground surface after alteration at the highest point adjoining the building structure. This essentially means that building height will be measured from the highest adjoining grade. Now, the reason for the amendments are to provide building height flexibility and to be more consistent with the measurement of walls, fences, and signs, which also use highest grade to determine overall height. The next proposed amendment relates to communication facilities. Staff is proposing an amendment that would exempt essential communication facilities for emergency, police, and medical service dispatch located on private property from the development code requirements in the communication facilities section of the code. Now, one example where an exemption is necessary relates to architectural standards. The development code currently requires all communications towers use stealth design, which includes concealing attached antennas and prohibiting the use of lattice-type towers. Communication towers used for cellular service are only using cell phone antenna arrays, which can easily be concealed in a monopole or other stealth design. Emergency service towers require additional arrays, dishes, and antennas that cannot practically be concealed. Therefore, the lattice-type tower is more functional for emergency service towers. In addition, there are reduced maintenance costs and repair times with lattice towers as opposed to monopoles. For example, monopoles require the city to order a lift truck from Tucson, causing delays in the repair work and ultimately delays in emergency responses. Repairs to lattice towers only require local personnel to climb the structure and make the necessary repairs. Finally, lattice structures are the industry standard for emergency service towers, as can be seen from the Cochise County lattice towers all over the county. Now, the amendments would expedite the review and construction of emergency communication facilities, which ultimately allow for quicker response times. Having said all that, of course, the city will make an effort to meet all development code requirements where practicable. And the final amendment being proposed relates to the architecture and design review applicability. Now, although the architectural and design requirements are applicable to commercial, industrial, and apartment developments, the code does not specify if these requirements are applicable to sheds or accessory buildings associated with these developments. So to clarify this issue, staff is proposing code amendments which would exempt certain accessory structures from meeting the architectural and design review criteria. Specifically, accessory structures that have a wall or walls that can be viewed from a public right-of-way, 30 linear feet or less, would be exempt from the architectural and design standards. Staff reviewed all the commercial industrial sheds issued in the past 6 years, and none had a wall which was greater than 30 linear feet. Now, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard the amendments on August 3rd and unanimously recommended them to City Council. The City Council approved a 30-day public comment period on August 12th. The city has not received any public comments since that meeting date. And this does conclude staff's report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Pregler. Questions from Mr. Pregler on this item? Any discussion? I know we beat this up the last time it came we beat it up pretty well, so. Okay, for the meeting next, we would have call comments to the public, or call the public, comments and requests to council, and then adjournment. So that moves us up to item B, discussion of our economic development group. And who's gonna start?
Well,
Mr. Boone or Mr. Putucci?
I'll go ahead and start while Tony's getting ready. So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is the follow-up from your last work session discussion about a month ago with regards to setting up an economic development group to assist in our efforts as we move forward. That's more community-based. We went through last time a number of different options as to how that group might look. After council discussion, it appeared that the preferred route was some sort of an advisory group and not necessarily a commission, similar to advisory groups that we've had in the past. So taking that direction, and then, of course, we offered then to come up with a proposal for you to consider, which we're going to do today. The proposal before you that Mr. Boone will go over follows the guidance of setting up an advisory group, and I don't want to steal Tony's thunder here, so I'll have him go in there and then I'll fill in when necessary on the proposal. But the proposal is to set up what we call an Economic Opportunities Council. And as Tony talks, he'll go through the machinations in terms of how that will work. So, Tony, go ahead.
Check in the boss, so you're okay. All right, so Mr. Mayor and Council, based on the previous work session, and then I actually went back and looked at the video, kind of as Chuck said, really within the structural solutions on the first slide. Clearly, the temporary task force was out, at least based on what I could tell from consensus. I didn't get a read from a regulatory or a non-regulatory commission side, and which is why we ended up with the flexible nature of, call it a mayor, city council group. And then, of course, the partnership group was not, at least it didn't appear to be the likely course of action. So with that, had a good conversation with the city manager. We came up with the two next slides, which tie into an economic opportunity. And interesting, the word opportunity was used several times in the previous work session. We can call it a panel, commission, board, etc., based on your opinion and how you fall out on it. You would drive the scheduling for said group. Whether you wanted to require a meeting monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or in the case of a very specific opportunity that was presented. And we'll talk a little bit more how that may look. And ultimately, we try to draft in a purpose with the purpose to explore, and more importantly, the action verb of pursue. It's easy to have discussions and talk. The real intent as we kind of sat back and looked at this was for the group to come together and to pursue collectively the opportunities as they see. Effectively, the opportunities could be bent in two broad categories. First, if there was a clear line on a business, a particular sector that showed up, or I would also put in there a significant event. If you look at the economic impact of, say, the Tour de Zona in March of next year, if someone was attempting to propose a 3 or 4 day event, there would be a significant economic impact. So kind of the broad bucket there. The second half of the broad bucket came into condition setting, and it may fit the bill, whether it was a grant, and I used the educational grant in the slide. The Defense Community Infrastructure Pilot Program would be another one, perhaps. From a resiliency project on Fort Huachuca that may be led by SSVEC, partnered with the fort, and then we would have a supporting role in that. Ultimately, that would lead itself to a better environment for continued economic growth. We have to put it on there because no matter where I go and who I talk to, the world-famous Red Lobster and all of the other things come up. But I say this in all seriousness, this is not a group to get together to identify a particular retailer or a business. You'll hear them: Red Lobster, Costco, Trader Joe's,
no matter which organization I've had. And I think Chuck went through a very detailed why some of that doesn't happen in the city. But that's kind of at least to say what we don't see this group operating and doing. The second slide comes in and talks about, again, we need partners with a particular industry perspective, a depth of understanding and knowledge, that they could come out and identify the potential opportunities as they see it, with the intent and plan to work together. I added the word subcommittee because it may, quite frankly, depending on how you break this out, there could be many players in this or it could be very few, depending on the circumstances, with the ultimate goal to achieve results. The following list is not inclusive, nor is it prioritized, but it was really just kind of a mind meld of the potentials that may play in this one. And it clearly falls in line, our education partners, whether it's K through 12 or post-secondary, our medical services, professional services, lawyers, bookkeepers, and they run their own service line. Real estate developers, commercial brokers. Fort Huachuca plays a significant role in how we define that and how we work with Fort Huachuca, especially within the ethics rules, will be an interesting proposition. Defense contractors, small and large. I put hospitality in one large group, but you could break it out separately. Our utilities, especially our partners such as SSVEC, small retail, large. Workforce is a significant role, and in fact, that's probably one of the larger issues going on right now. We've had discussions at the Arizona at Work Board. In fact, we'll meet tomorrow with the Chamber, Arizona at Work, and the SBDC to figure out if there was something we collectively can do on that. Our banking, our investing, credit union, that side of the house. I think our nonprofits have the potential to play a role, whether it's business or service related. And I included sports leagues, quite frankly, because of my good friend Laura Wilson and Parks Rec and Sports Division and the significant play. The last one is really just the catch-all, realizing that the AREDF, the VBOC, the small business developments, all of those people have a role and will play in this sandbox we call economic development. So how we choose to move forward, or really, quite frankly, more correctly, how you choose to move forward. But those are the larger groups that I see that play both directly and indirectly in the economic development of the city of Sierra Vista. We've got great partnerships with many of them. And with that, again, we just wanted to propose this idea to give you a way forward. Clearly, you can change from here, make adjustments, but at least we shift from a known point if I go back to my old lingo.
Chuck?
Yeah, to follow along with what Tony has put forth here, basically what we're trying to think about is, beyond just the traditional role of economic development that we all kind of know, which is trying to attract businesses, to the area, or working on, retention or expansion of existing businesses. Those are very traditional economic development roles that a public sector or city, department might work on. We would continue to obviously, do those types of traditional things within this framework. But this framework really counts on our community partners to come to the table and bring other ideas and other things to bear. For example, the DSIPS grant that Tony talked about, which has now resulted in the construction of the EMS substation, was a grant opportunity that he found. We formed a team, and put the grant together and did all the legwork to get that money brought into the community, which is now resulting in an important project. But we have other people, such as Cochise College. They may have a project, they may have a program. The University of Arizona may have a project or a program that might expand workforce, say in cybersecurity or other areas that we're looking at. The hospital may want to do recruiting or bring in other specialized disciplines to the community. They may need help with marketing. The school district or others may have grant opportunities for their facilities and other things that maybe they need assistance with. But we have all these different partners out there that have those things as opportunities, and we're viewing all those as economic opportunities for the community. So it's not just bringing in a new business, it's what can they bring in to help the community's infrastructure, help the community's workforce, help the community in terms of bringing better services that can help us market the community to the outside world. So the idea then is they bring those opportunities forward. The group discusses whether or not that is something worth pursuing. If it is an idea that is worth pursuing, then that group would put together the staffing necessary to, write the grant, write the proposal, give letters of support, lobby. It could be any number of things that we can do to be of assistance to these various groups in the community if they need it. And we have professionals that do that kind of thing on a daily basis. And I think we can be a force multiplier to a lot of these different groups in the community in terms of helping them try to get some of these things done. So the opportunities come in, we identify them, we work on them, and we try to bring them to fruition. So it's not a group that comes in and says, well, city, you need to get a Costco, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. It's specific items that can be worked on that can really bring us a focus and things to work on that can be accomplished. So that's the idea behind our proposal here. Now, obviously, if you have changes or want to move in a totally different direction, that's fine with us as well. But we thought this might be a direction that might be able to show some real fruit in a short amount of time.
Okay. One of the things I didn't see on here was a mission statement, and the closest thing that you've got is on slide 2, where it says purpose. So basically, you want to expand the economic capabilities of the city by taking stakeholders, representatives, and explore what the possibilities are, and then through partnerships pursue and define and pursue those opportunities so that we can improve, whether it's education, whether it's jobs, or what, the whole gamut, not just bringing in a business.
It's even as simple as some of the things we're doing. Laura's put in grants for ball fields for our sports tourism, and Tony's talked about that a little bit, or events. But the school district also has facilities, and I'm sure there are grant opportunities, for school districts, to do those kind of things. They just maybe need some help identifying them or working with them to make those things happen in terms of how they fit into a larger community context. So, it's a good thing if the school district is able to artificial turf their football and soccer field, for example. It saves water, it helps us expand our inventory.
And that's all good stuff, Chuck. But again, to me, that's relatively short term. We're talking 0 to 5 years, or 0 in that time frame. There are other things in the community that we need to look at long term that we may not be able to get right away because we don't have X many acres for a industrial facility, or we may not have certain things. This group could also develop the workforce and the education level and the other things that would be needed to attract a base business, is what I'll call it, and that could take 15 years to be able to do that.
That's
but
true.
Again, it's a short. To me, there's basically a short opportunity scope and a longer opportunity horizon that we need to look at as well. Comments?
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I like how they put opportunity. And have more of a direction for the group I think the number of representatives we put on here on slide 2, Tony, it's a lot, but I think bringing all
The thing is, it's got to be from that list. the way I would see this operating is you're not gonna have 16 people on a committee. If it deals with the hospital, let's say the hospital has an education issue, they need more nurses. Well, then obviously it's the hospital and the Cochise College and maybe University of Arizona that we need to engage and work on that issue, and it may take a couple of years to generate enough nurses or technicians or whatever the need is for the hospital to make the hospital more viable, or not just the hospital, any medical office in town, really.
So basically, out of the
You
16.
wouldn't need all 16 there, but you'd have to set up a little task force for that specific.
So basically, we bring it together as a when needed group, and we'll say, okay, for this,
Well, yeah,
if we
and
do
I
that,
think we're getting further into the discussion. But the way I see it is, we need to have a base group that identifies what are the key issues.
I'm tracking
okay.
that with you.
Once we do that base group that says, okay, these are the key issues where we think we can, this one doesn't work, this one works, this one may be working. Then who are the people, we need to identify those team members that we need to bring in to work on that specific, maybe a hospital task force, or it may be a sports task force, or something in the hotel industry. But again, we need to figure out what's doable, and we need to have a kind of a core group with city help that meets on a regular basis, maybe not probably less than once a quarter, to define what the parameters are, and then have the task force, and the task force would then come back and report to them as well as the city as to what the progress is or what the progress isn't, or where the difficulties are, and work through the issues.
Right, I'm tracking, Mr. Mayor. That's kind of the same line I was thinking. Just wanted to make sure we just didn't have a when we need them, we'll call them type opportunity.
Greg, this
No,
was
I
your
agree.
baby to get started. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think what Tony and the staff has done is good, but it lacks specificity, and it lacked, as you said earlier, a mission statement. Now, I had provided you, Mr. Mayor, and some fellow council members with a proposal for an Economic Development Commission, and I'm still using that term, by the way. And the mission statement, if I can read it, the Sierra Vista Economic Development Commission is appointed to act in an advisory and monitoring capacity on behalf of the citizens of Sierra Vista to maximize economic development opportunities within the context of the community's character. It also recognizes that there's a need for a long-term vision and strategic plan, which is what you touched on, Mr. Mayor, to balance residential, open space, commercial, office and service activities and needs within our community. And specifically within that mission statement, the EDC views its mission as follows: to be an advocate for Sierra Vista and promote the city in business, real estate, and commercial endeavors, to serve as a liaison with and support the development of appropriate industry and commerce, to serve as a representative of the city in discussions concerning companies wishing to move or to expand here in Sierra Vista, to serve as a catalyst for economic development, promote and monitor an economic development plan based on the needs and views of businesses as well as the residential community, facilitate the creation of jobs in the city for both existing and new businesses, champion assistance to new and existing businesses, promote the city as a destination point with emphasis on lodging, food, recreation, and entertainment. I think we're doing that. Encourage doing business locally, and I know our Chamber of Commerce is always talking about that. And to advise the city council, city manager, director of community development, and economic development manager on all economic development matters, and enable that more attention be given to economic issues and opportunities, and provide a greater opportunity for citizen participation in the affairs of city government. Now, I know I went through that long list, but those were the ones that I envisioned when I first made this proposal. And I think we're getting there, but I think we need a lot more discussion on how this is going to work. Because I originally proposed a 5-member commission serving 3-year terms, appointed by the city council, regular meetings to identify things, and I like the subcommittees using all of these various sectors that Tony has pointed out. We could focus and drill in when we see opportunities.
Experts,
Pardon?
subject matter experts.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So, that's my feeling about today's presentation. I think we got more work to do.
Okay. Sir.
And I think everything that Councilman Johnson just talked about too is what you brought up, Mr. Mayor, with that core group. That can be the mission of that core group. And no, I mean, maybe some of the things in the end, I think is kind of redundant. We're doing in different areas. And hopefully as business owners, people of the community, whether it's education, professional services, real estate, they're going to be selling Vista anyway, I think. And I think everyone's an ambassador of our beautiful city. But I think that's the start for that core group, Mr. Mayor. Now, we just try to outline a layout, maybe it's Tony, I don't know who, when we go to that next step of subgroups and going down and getting further in the weeds.
Well, to me, it's pretty simple. If you do have the core group, whether it's 5, 6, 7, doesn't make that much difference, but we need to identify those key players. Once that group is identified, the key thing is to sell them, from our perspective, to sell them on the idea that, yes, we need them to look at what it's practical today, and they need to get educated up to speed on what's practical today and where the priorities are based on what's practical on how do we expand our local economy.
Roger.
So that's going to be a tough thing. But again, once that group meets and says, okay, here's an opportunity, here's a valid opportunity, then they have to, the best way for them to operate is to get with the subgroups with city's help and go after the issues to get something constructive to attract additional business, additional employees, training, whatever may be needed to ensure our economic development. So, but I agree with you. We need to come up with a piece of paper that says, just like we do with the other commissions, similar to the one you drafted, that basically said, here's the mission statement, here's the organization, here's how often they meet, all the other routine things, and that's the next step to get that articulated.
Yeah, and I think it's important that the core group that we're talking about right now meet regularly. I mean, because if you meet quarterly,
Well,
a lot gets lost in the weeds.
Because I would say not less than quarterly, because if you think about it, we want people with experience, and we want people that have a sense of community and want to work for the betterment of the community. And I'll tell you, those people are already busy. And we don't want just a bunch of old gray-haired retirees doing the thing. We want
Like
to span men, women, old, young, across a diverse area. And that's the other thing is in our other commissions, and this is one of the reasons why I think it's important for us to go beyond a little bit. On our other commissions, we don't allow people that live outside the city limits in a lot of our commissions, and that's one of the things we need to make sure we do with this. Is we may have people that are successful business owners in the city, or successful developers in the city, or whatever, educators in the city, that may not necessarily live within the city limits, but they may be a key person or a valuable person that we want to get on at least the first board, and that's going to be critical. The first year is going to be critical. We need to get the right people on the board. We need to get them started off right, and they may be meeting every other month, or may be meeting monthly initially, but I will eventually like to get to the point where they call a meeting, a minimum of quarterly, and review what all the subgroups are doing, and work together toward whatever the goals that they've established to bring in additional commerce.
That was part of my initial proposal, that you didn't necessarily have to live within the city, but as long as you had a business within the city limits, that it would be appropriate to have that person on the board. And once they're, say, for example, they retire, or their business goes away, or they move elsewhere, that they would be replaced on the commission
The other thing,
or the advisory board.
Other thing you mentioned was a 3-year term Normally, we'll do it's either a 2 or a 4-year term, I don't remember. It's a 2-year term. Since it's not, well, I could see doing a 2-year term with unlimited, but again, that's a proposal we can come up with when we write the draft proposal to, or the, what am I looking for? The enabling legislation to establish the Economic Opportunity Council, or whatever we're gonna
The
call it.
resolution.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't think you really want to lock yourself into, what you have for your standing
Oh,
commissions
we
here,
don't.
because,
We're
this
looking for
group is going to
specific-
be more fluid. For example, there's going to be a new hospital administrator. They change out frequently. And,
College president.
you don't want to have a resolution naming so-and-so, or whatever, or if somebody else moves.
Don't want to identify the positions by name, obviously. We probably need to put some thought to making sure that we have the broad categories covered: medical, education. A representative from one of those. We may want to go that way, but again,
And of course, as you mentioned, it is hard to get, Dr. Rottweiler or Dr. Holmes, whoever the hospital administrator is, or others in the room at the same time. That's always a difficult thing. With Teams, hopefully it's a little bit easier if we open it up, and have, virtual capabilities and that kind of thing.
I just share with everybody, when we went through the BRAC the last time, we kind of had a similar setup. It was all informal, nothing was formal. But what they did is they looked at whether it was a 7 or 8 items in BRAC that they were specifically looking at. And the community got together and they formed a massive committee with the heads of 7 or 8, whatever it was. And they looked at what do we needed for BRAC. They went back to their community partners and these other groups, and they worked on those specific issues, everything from education to hospital to all the other things that were
Household employment.
there were additional community issues that they looked at in BRAC, and that worked out fairly well. Environment was one of them too, which is the one I sat on, and that worked very well. But again, as soon as BRAC went away, everybody said, "Well, we're done." But that kind of a structure did work and was manageable. Because to me, when I thought about this, I said, "Is this going to be manageable?" I think what we're talking about is a core group that heads it, and then you basically have action teams for whatever areas we're pursuing that work intimately with Tony to get things done.
Yeah, we're not professing to be the experts either. We need,
that's right.
We need people to come to us with what they see are their opportunities or where they think they need assistance, in whatever respect it is. So,
I think looking at major people, major players for these side groups is good, but I want to just make sure we caution ourselves. The only difference between success and very successful is time and opportunity. So if we don't look at the people that are laying the bricks or the people that are sewing the clothes per se, that we're leaving out a big part of our population. So we keep throwing J.D. Waller and the heads of these
Well,
organizations.
the thing is, we do that for ease of example.
Roger, no, I agree. But
And I would agree that there may be Joe Schmo that does a certain thing that's critical that we're not aware of, or that knows people that could be a critical key player. And the idea of these subgroups is to identify that person,
Roger.
and get that person involved.
And for me, what I'm talking about more is that group of core people rather than, we can go and name the hospital CEO or COO as the point of contact for the hospital when we go to a subgroup. But I think for that core group, one, we got to have people that want to come forward, step forward, and volunteer to do this. And,
Yeah.
and I'd like to start hearing from people. We've been
that's-
talking about it for a couple of
Well, the thing
months.
is, we need to get to what the structure is down.
Roger.
And then go out and recruit. And it may not be J.D. Rollins at the college. There may be somebody else who would be better at representing education or workforce development or whatever that we're looking for.
Thank you, Ms. May.
I agree with you. It doesn't have to be a set of old gray-haired guys or bald guys or whatever. I'm trying to identify the key talent.
Yes.
and the people that have the desire to do it, and that's gonna be very tricky. Especially for the core group. I think we can, we're not gonna be time dependent on the action teams, I'll call them, for specific items. So, I think we're at the point where we need to rip out, the old copy of Greg's, proposal and start working on specifics to get a proposal together to establish. I think we're at that point, don't you guys?
Yes, sir.
Am I off base?
I have copies if I may share that with.
I think that's a yes from Greg.
Yeah, that's first. Yeah, I'll pass that to staff because I still got my copy with all my markups on it. Check it, and Tony get a copy of it. Okay. Any other discussion? Any last words, Chuck or Tony?
We'll bring back something,
And,
more specific.
When you get an idea how long that's gonna take, let me know so we can make sure it's on the appropriate work session so that we can discuss it again.
There's a whole bunch of them
Okay?
there, too. Okay.
All right, council executive report is the next item, and the only question I had, I got answered already, which is how we were doing on spending our CDGB money, so I'll open it up for anybody else to have questions, or Mr. Titchik, do you want to make an opening statement?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you can tell, from the opening message today, of course, we had the signing of the MOU in support of the BLM's resource management plan, so that went very well at the San Pedro House today, and hopefully we'll see some good efforts come out of that in the future. A lot of effort went into that. So your strategic plan projects are starting to roll out. The EMS substation is now underway. Of course, Fry Boulevard, with the better weather, we should see greater progress on those. And of course, then you have a number of other actually, we got a bid in on the Mount Dooley project, and that looks very favorable, and hopefully I'll be able to report on that more specifically on Thursday at your council meeting. So that's moving forward, but that is good news. And certainly then a number of other projects are going to be in the chute, the animal control facility, the bridge, Avenida Escuela, the reconstruction of the Charleston Road area just east of Highway 90. So a number of new other projects are going to be rolling out on the heels of the one. So Sharon and her staff are going to be very busy here this year. So we don't need to worry about job security down there. So, but we're looking forward to getting these done, and I think it's going to be a very exciting year in terms of what you're going to see and the changes you're going to see in the community as a result. So we're very pleased about that. Other than that, business as usual. Monsoons are over, so it's time to clean up weeds, and we got our own weeds to clean up over at the Veterans Park Sports Complex. So we'll try to get started down there, and certainly we'll have the community cleaned up and spruced up. And of course, it's event season at the park. Oktoberfest, unfortunately, I missed, but a number of others coming up here in the next month or so. So it's an exciting time to be in Sierra Vista.
Okay, questions for Mr. Titchik on the executive report? Go ahead.
Just one, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the sign, you said that the vendor is having some equipment issues. I know the bid was accepted, it came under budget.
The airport sign you're talking about? Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, Councilmember Johnson, we were contacted by way of procurement. So his computer-based software that he uses to create the sign, he had a mechanical failure. And as many things in today's environment, supply chains are long. So as of a couple weeks ago, he was still trying to procure the appropriate equipment to replace it.
Okay.
So Kenny reached out to him yesterday, and we were hoping to have the color scheme and the color approvals next week. So yes, the project's taken a little bit longer than was originally planned.
I know that's a key piece of your job, trying to get some people out there at the airport to do business with us, so. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4th of July was amazing because we're covering that time period. And I think I agree. It's probably more than 20,000 people showed up, and we're at both parks, which it was a great event. I think people were just dying to get back to reality and back to things. And if I can ask, any preliminary yet of Oktoberfest? Because it was another smashing hit, in my opinion, knowing from how many bratwursts we gave away with Diamond Oak. So I don't know if there's any preliminary anything that you might be able to bring up already, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Benning. I did bring our total revenue numbers and comparing it with 2018, which was a very successful year. It was a 25% growth from 2018. And 2018, our total revenue was 63,000, and we were just under 85,000 this year. So it was very good. I don't have the revenue numbers yet, the net revenue numbers yet, because I don't have all the costs entered into my spreadsheet, but that will definitely be on the next executive report. We're very, very happy with the turnout. It was a great event.
Thank you. Chief Thrasher, on the new reporting system, I know we're going to stay with the UCR for comparison purposes, but will you be including the numbers and just so we can kind of get used to it?
We will once we're caught up.
Okay.
Regarding that, it'll probably be to the end of the year before that's caught
well, then
up.
that's
Because
good
they had
timing.
to certify our data for the last 3 months of last year before
Okay.
we were able to continue on. So it'll take a while to catch up to that system and get that done, but it'll be eventually put in there as well. The difference will be it'll be a lot more, so I may have to pare down that NIBRS report a little bit to be more consistent with what the UCR was with some other categories added in there.
And when you say it's a lot more, it's just broken down into
It's
kind
a
of
lot more,
individualized?
yes, a lot more crimes, including like frauds and those type of stuff, so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staying with Chief Thrasher, you guys are amazing. Quick question, I talked to Deputy Chief over the weekend, or last weekend. With recruitment where it's at, are you looking at changing some of the standards, or giving a little freeway, like the college credit? If I don't have enough, but I'll have enough after the academy.
That's already being done.
It's okay.
That's already being done, so they get 30 credits from the academy, so if they come in with 30 credits, they already match that.
Okay.
We're also taking applicants that would be in school, say they're 3 credits shy. They apply, say I'm in college right now, I'll have that done. We're also accepting the joint services transcript as college transcript.
Yes, sir.
And we are currently now working diligently with the career skills program, with the Army transition program, with their internship program to have them go to the academy during that process. I've got 3 individuals that are in the midst of trying to get into the January academy through that program, so.
Thanks, sir. And then a follow-up real quick question. Who do they, so everyone watching this, who do they contact if someone's interested in?
Lily Perry is our recruiter. They can just call into the police department and ask to speak with the recruiter, and they'll get to the right person.
Okay, thanks, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. The only other question I got on that line there, Chief, is are we paying close attention to the military posts that you would like to go in and recruit on to make sure that if they're in a low COVID area and they're open for business, that we're able to get in and recruit at those locations?
That's been the issue. We have done one recruiting trip already to Fort Bliss, and we actually they're going this week. We've got 3 recruiting fairs this week up in the Phoenix area, as well as some military stuff. So we are keeping track of that to the points where we can go to those locations.
Because I think the council needs to be aware of at some point, not all military installations are accessible for this kind of thing, And when they open up, we need to get on it like,
That is correct. The career skills program that we're working with the Army, we're working with Fort Huachuca right now and hopefully make that a pilot program. And then once that is up and running, where we have the details worked out for our hiring process, is to then hit the other military bases regarding that, with that program as well.
okay.
So,
All right, I'm glad to see the recruiting is active, because you got to stay there and stay active to keep your force filled. So thanks, Chief. Appreciate all your efforts.
I have a
And
question.
Thank
for
you,
Laura.
recruiter.
Thank you, recruiter. Yeah. I'm really excited about the patio, pottery studio revamp patio, and getting rid of the diapers, as they call it, on the windows. That's great. I'm excited to see what it looks like. Is there a date for when it'll be open?
It is open,
Oh, it's open already?
yes.
I just have to get over there.
I'll send you the dates and the
Oh,
hours.
thank you. Okay, and I'm also excited about the grants you received for the multi-use pass, Sharon, because I know some people who use that part of BST to commute on bike to Fort Huachuca, and that's gonna be, they're really going to be happy to see that. And Judy's work, I guess the marketing department's work on the ads, I was really impressed with that, and I love the numbers, display by numbers that they used, highlighting how awesome we are. So a shout out to her. That's it.
Okay, anybody else? All right, then we'll move on to order recent trips, meetings and future meetings. Future meetings, tomorrow at, is it noon? Is the first time we're gonna get together with the other cities for our luncheon. And the way that basically goes, everybody has an opportunity to stand up and introduce themselves, and then each city talks about what's going on. This is the first time we've been able to do this. So we're probably gonna discuss, what do we do for future meetings? We do it quarterly, monthly, et cetera, and then we go around to different cities to do that. And what this really helps is when we do get into a legislative session, if there are issues that are common to all cities, then we can more effectively approach our legislators or invite our legislators to be there when we discuss a certain topic. So it's a good discussion group. It's a good area to meet the other city council members and mayors. So I would encourage council attendance. And we buy your lunch. The city buys the lunch, and of course, when we go to the next city, they'll buy the lunch, et cetera. So. Anything else on recent trips, meetings, future meetings? Ma'am?
So also in the morning, I'm attending, I think ACA is hosting it at the Realtors Association, discussing efforts on broadband in the area, and I think it's a work informational session. And then we had our first meeting last week, on the district lines for the county and that committee. And so some initial...
The apportionment.
The apportionment of drawing the boundary lines. And so we'll be working on the college, the JP districts, and of course the supervisor districts, and looking at that. That was just a very first kind of informational, what we plan to do, open meeting law review, and then we'll move forward. And I believe our next meeting is October 2nd.
Okay. Anything else? Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Parks and Rec met on the 7th of September. And so everyone knows, and they're getting it changed online, we're meeting the first Tuesday of the month now instead of the second. But one of the big things came out I want to share with everybody, and I hope we have a quorum and we have to put it out. October the 16th, we're meeting at Summit Park to do cleanup. It's the one over off of Avenue to Cochise, if you don't know where it's at 9 a.m. Everybody's welcome. Wear some dirty pants. We'll be painting sidewalks, painting basketball courts and equipment. So look forward to seeing y'all out there.
General cleanup for the gloves and everything else?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
No, just recently went to the Be Healthy Sierra Vista Town Hall. It was a very good meeting. We talked a lot about a bunch of different topics. Basically anything that provides a healthy city, whether it's not just eating and exercising, but also, getting a good healthy wage, things like that. So it's very good, put on by that group there at U of A South. The next one is coming up Wednesday 29th 5 to 6:30 p.m. in the Discovery Garden Pavilion at U of A South. And if you've never been to that pavilion, it's a really awesome little pavilion that they have constructed there. It's got a little kitchen in there. It's a really, really nice setup. Not to mention the gardens all around it. So it's a beautiful place. And I think tomorrow is also the Take Your Business Online breakfast. Tomorrow over at Cochise College. So for any local businesses that are interested in getting their business online and competing with those businesses that do online business that they don't, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. at Cochise College.
Well, thanks for putting your meeting minutes in the read file.
Yes, sir.
Because I think that's important. If we have something we like to share, that's a good vehicle when we don't, if it doesn't suit just a two-minute talk at the council meeting, we can get a little more in-depth on what happened to those meetings that we can't attend or we didn't attend. Okay, anything else? Future discussion items of council requests, so we got anything
Mr.
scheduled?
Mayor, I've got the Mayor Pro Tem's request to share the short-range transportation plan at the next work session.
Okay.
At the next work session. I won't be here.
At the work session after the next work session.
Yeah,
And
I'll
that's from the-
actually be at an
That's
MPO
from-
conference.
That's from the
yeah.
MPO, that's from the
Yes.
MPO.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We kind of, we're talking about it, and then we kind of stopped talking about it. And one of Mr. Councilman Rodriguez's do-outs actually made me think of it and want to bring it back to the table. The Youth Commission. We still have do-outs of how that's going to look, who's going to make that up, but it'll actually help with something Councilman Rodriguez asked about, is taking a representative from our youth to a League of Cities or to an event to represent the youth of our city and learn that way also. So
And we know, in the past, when we had a youth commission, we would invite the youth commission.
Right.
Normally, we would do it the year they were in Tucson, the year we met in Tucson, because it would save us money. But we're going to go to both Phoenix and Tucson every other year. So you're right, we need to schedule something to get the youth commission reestablished, reorganized, and that's been on my list, and I quite frankly haven't gotten to it.
well, I know we're busy. That's why.
And well, the thing is, the
forgot.
COVID issue has been the one that keeps it, because right now, the school board is an interesting situation, and I shouldn't say the school board, we need to draw from all the secondary schools for the youth commission, not just Buena High School and the junior high. Okay, so that, we need to put that on my to-do list, I guess. Okay, anything else? All right, is there if there's nothing else before the council, I appreciate all your efforts, your discussion, and your input today. Tony, appreciate your efforts, as well as the community development and everybody else that's here. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.